Books bound in human skin have been a staple of film from The Evil Dead through to Hocus Pocus as elements of fantasy, fiction and magic, but they present a real-life problem for curators, as has been seen in today's news. There's been a second copy discovered of a book bound in the skin of murderer William Corner at Bury St Edmunds, and it's going to be going on display. I'd like you to pause for a moment and think about any emotional reaction that you may just have had. Does it matter that the individual in question was a murderer? Would it make a difference if they were a psychiatric patient, or if they were an actress whose skin was being used to bind a copy of a play that they had appeared in as a tribute? Those are two stories that have also appeared in the news in the last year. These books were produced largely in the 19th century, and there aren't a huge number of them, but we do know that they definitely are bound in human skin. A number have been tested in order to prove it. And alongside other human remains in museums, they present an ethical problem for everyone that has to care for them. Now, various professional bodies, including the Museum Association and ICOM, have provided codes of ethics and guidance on this subject, but it's still very much a matter of debate, and I would love to hear your views. I personally deal with skeletal remains in store and in some of the museum displays that I care for. I don't have an issue with that myself, but then I also wouldn't have a problem with my own remains being displayed in that way. I have had a colleague who would have an issue in the case of Christian remains, but is fine for pagan. And I'm not even going into the whole question of race, because that, quite frankly, is a subject that I do not feel qualified to talk about. But going back to myself, as I said, I don't have a problem with the use of skeletal remains in this way. I don't have a problem with things like mummies, and I don't actually have an issue with these books either. I think I would be able to work with them relatively comfortably. But I did go to an exhibition on the Scythians at the British Museum back in 2017 and have a visceral reaction to the sight of human skin with tattoos on display, which I found quite uncomfortable. That gave me the ick, but the other elements of human remains don't, which suggests that, rightly or wrongly, I have an instinctive reaction based on whether the remains appear more like living flesh. There's also the question of not only should we display them, but should we be keeping them at all? Now, the owner of the book I mentioned earlier, which was bound in the remains of a psychiatric patient, Harvard chose to remove the binding from the book and have them disposed of in a way that they described as respectful, presumably some form of burial. But that also has problems with it, because you're effectively destroying a historic object based on current 21st century moral principles. We're destroying evidence. But what do you think? Because I would genuinely like to know, as it may actually impact how I make decisions going forward. Is this a black or white question to you? And are there shades of grey? Does the nature of the remains make a difference? Does the individual in question? Does the reason for display? Please do let me know, and let's have a conversation about this, because it's really important.